right, welcome everybody. My name is Michael Tillinger, and we're going to take a little journey of discovery. We realize that the history of our planet is a lot stranger than we ever could possibly realize. And when I say more strange and more mysterious, I really mean that. And it's only when you start researching the origins of humankind and the mysterious events that brought us to this place in the year 2013 that you realize how weird the stuff in the past has been. So the clearer we are and the better the picture is of our origins, the easier it is to figure out why we are in this mess, why the world seems so screwed up. It helps us to become comfortable and be at ease with where we are and figure out a way forward. And I think many people are reaching this beautiful place of enlightenment, and the rise of consciousness is helping us to do that, because ultimately it is all about enlightenment and the rise of consciousness. The opening verse of the Hebrew Bible was actually incorrectly translated. He found that the opening phrase did not begin with the obligatory first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is common practice. And that first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph or Aleph. When he inserted that obligatory Aleph to that opening phrase, it changed the meaning of the first verse of the Bible completely. Instead of saying, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," it changed the meaning to, "The Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth." Because when the gods were on earth, when they were active on earth, the Elohim, there were giants on earth. And the giants thing I bring into this because it's a beautiful example of how little we know about our human history in ancient times and in current times. In Numbers 13:28, it talks about the Anakim, "But the people who lived there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there." We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. When you look like grasshoppers to somebody, you're clearly a lot smaller than they are. And it describes that we know nothing who these descendants of Anak were, who the Anakim were, who the Nephilim were. And we further obviously read about the daughters of the gods and when the Nephilim were on earth and so forth. But it gets more interesting when you look at the Jewish Encyclopedia, when they talk about the Anakim as being the same titanic race as the Rephaim, the Nephilim, the Gibborim, the Zamzumim, and the Emim. Who on earth are these people? And then you get to this kind of stuff. I mean, what's going on here? It clearly points in the direction that we know very little about what kind of people lived on planet Earth. And when you see this kind of thing, you go, what is this? These are spectacular. The one on the left are among the mummies found in the mounds of Ohio in the USA. That was completely covered up by the Smithsonian. Giants walked the earth, and this is not somebody's doodles or drawings or imagination. These are real sizes of skeletons found throughout human history. And then my favorite, the beautiful footprint in rough granite in South Africa, which is just spectacular. It tells us how little we know about what used to go on planet Earth. The current belief is that Southern Africa was a sparsely populated part of the world with hardly anybody living there. Just a few thousand hunter-gatherers with their loincloths running around, shooting a deer here and a buck over there, running away from the lions and so forth, right? But that's unfortunately not consistent with what the stone ruins of South Africa tell us. They're often called cattle kraal, of little historic value, and ignored by our current historians, because they're just a bunch of cattle enclosures. They're really not very important. Well, I'm going to show you a few of these to make you realize that we're dealing with something far more mysterious than cattle enclosures. First of all, you realize that they're all circular. Everyone is unique. That is the consistency. Everyone is circular, and yet each one of them is completely unique. What is this activity all about? It's always about gold. And when they asked him, who does the gold belong to? It always was a single answer. The gold belongs to the gods. The ancient history of Southern Africa is all about gold. You can't get away from it. Most of the gold in the world has come out of Southern Africa, between Zimbabwe and South Africa. The great kingdom of Monomotapa, the African golden kings that were attacked by all the civilizations from the north, but could never be conquered. What do other ancient texts tell us about gold and all this weird ancient past? For that, we need to go to the Sumerian tablets, the oldest written record of human history that we've deciphered and started making some sense. And this is where we meet the Anunnaki, or the Anuna gods, the gods of heaven and earth that ruled the world, that came to this planet some 450,000 years. Why? In search of gold. And we read about Enki, the Sumerian, one of the leading Sumerian gods or deities of so-called Holy Trinity, from Anu, Enlil, and Enki. And there's some spectacular descriptions of what Enki did. Enki is not unknown to African culture and African shaman. Enki is known as Enkai in African culture, the creator god of the human race. I found that there were more than 10 million of these ruins. And when you realize that, you realize that we're dealing with something we know absolutely nothing about. And we go back to the drawing board. What happened to these ruins? This is a beautiful story that brings us back to the Bible. And I think a picture tells 1,000 words, doesn't it? Can see the really immense sedimentation there. But to really give us an indication of what happened, let's go back to some of the Sumerian tablets and see what they have to say. These are two of the famous Sumerian tablets known as the King's Lists, found at different times, different places. What's interesting is that they give us the same names of the same kings that ruled the same places for more than 220,000 years. So clearly these kings were not human, and yet they ruled the world. So therefore, we assume that they must have been Anunnaki. And that, I believe, is exactly what we're dealing with here. And wherever there are stone circles, there are gold mines. Right along the edge of these beautiful mountains, there are thousands and thousands of mines into the sides of these mountains. They're known as adit mines. Luckily, they survived because the mines into the ground are gone. They're covered by the soil from the flood. And in Leidenburg, where the famous Leidenburg heads were discovered, which don't look very human to me, there are at least 75,000 of these adit mines. 75,000 of these adit gold mines, just around Leidenburg, one little town. Extrapolate this to the rest of southern Africa. In the 1930s, mysterious mine shafts that looked something like this were found by at least 2 miners that told me their own stories independently. At about 100 feet deep, I came across these kind of shafts, these tunnels, that shouldn't have been there. When they brought the mining experts there to explain to them what it meant, they took possession of the strange tools and artifacts that these miners found in these tunnels. They removed the tools and artifacts, not explaining anything, saying, "We are aware of these," and they left. 1990s, De Beers found a mine shaft 22,000 feet deep, cut with absolute precision, indicating advanced laser technology. And this is why I call it the stones that ring like bells. And when you go onto the internet, go onto YouTube, just put in stones that ring like bells, and you'll see me ringing some of these stones to hear that if you close your eyes, it'll sound like a church bell. It doesn't sound like a stone. And it's that moment when I discovered that these stones ring like bells, that they actually have acoustic properties, that we're dealing with sound in the stone circles. It's all about sound. These are just a few more that I've collected that ring like bells. I call these the starter stones. They look like French loaves. They ring beautifully. They sit crystal-like sound. It's all about silica, people. 90% of most of the stone on earth contains silica. What do we use silica for? All the advanced technology. You know how it works? You can leave it in its natural form, just like you can leave the natural healing things in plants. You don't have to extract them like the pharmaceutical industry does and put it in a bottle so you can sell it to somebody. Leave it in the plants and make people eat the plants. So you see how the deception starts to infiltrate our lives on every possible level, when we could be using the stones as forms of information, energy, communication, everything. All you need to do is know how to use it. Where is the flagship and all this madness of millions and millions of stone circles and indicators of advanced knowledge of sacred geometry and the laws of nature and all this wonderfully exciting, juicy stuff that turns science on its head? Because that's what I love about it. It really forces us to rethink everything we've been taught in science and physics and all those areas as well, not just history. Adam's calendar. Undoubtedly, the most important discovery in more recent times. It was discovered by Jan Heine in 2003, and he knew immediately when he flew over it that this was not just a random, accumulation of rocks, that there was something very special about it. And he came back and he measured it and realized it was all aligned to the cardinal points of the earth and solstices and equinoxes. And these are the two main central stones in the middle. I called it Adam's calendar shortly after I met Jan Heine in 2007, not realizing how close to the truth that would actually be. It's known as Inzalo Yelanga, or birthplace of the sun. It is also referred to by Credo Mutwa, the place where heaven mated with Mother Earth. Does that ring a bell? Where the gods came down and saw the daughters of man and had children with them? Bingo! I think we've stumbled upon a really important place in all of human history, in southern Africa. Not somewhere else, but where the gold came from, in the Abzu, where the obsession of the gods was put to work to get the gold out of the ground. That's what it looks like. We're connected to the morphogenic field. We're starting to understand that we can access this information instantly. In fact, all the knowledge of the entire universe and all the information in it is accessible to us all the time. We just forgot how to do it. And we're relearning that because we are waking up. It's the age of awakening. But yet we find ourselves on this beautiful planet as a slave species. We are born free on our own planet, and yet we cannot move around freely. We cannot live where we choose to. We have to follow rules and instructions and laws that we didn't agree to when we were born. We have to work to earn money that we didn't agree to do. The restrictions are endless. Every socio-political system that we've had as a species has failed us. Humans everywhere live in misery. There seems to be no bright light at the end of the tunnel. Well, I'm here to tell you that there is a bright light at the end of the tunnel. There is a very bright light at the end of the tunnel. Do not believe what the news tells you. Do not believe what the doom and gloom prophets tell you. It is up to us to recognize how simple that bright light is for us to attain. And that's really what I'm going to end up with here today. How did it get so bad? I gave you a hint in the Sumerian tablets. A small group of royal political families that have become the banking families today took control of the world. And it started about 6,000 years ago in the Middle East, or in a place called Sumeria, when kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven, as I pointed out to you. There's physical evidence written down for us. When kings were appointed on earth from the humans to rule over them, they were given special knowledge, tools, and weapons so that they could subdue and subjugate the people over whom they ruled. And these are the priest kings that ruled the world with an iron fist for many, many thousands of years, and the bloodlines today are descendants of those priest kings. This is not something that happened just the other day. It's been going on for a long time. What did these priest kings do next? Soon as they were appointed as the priest kings of this planet, they introduced money. Money is not the consequence of thousands of years of barter and trade. That is disinformation. That is the information that they want you to believe because they want to associate and align money with the evolution of the human race. Stop thinking like that. That is not the case. Money was maliciously introduced into the human race as a tool of control. It becomes very clear as we go through this. Today, the royal political banking families or the banking families are closely aligned to the royal bloodlines. I believe that there's actually a very secret, clandestine group of beings that we don't know about. We'll never know who they are. They're actually pulling the purse strings, but there's very clear evidence that the bloodlines and the banking families are very, very closely connected. Our education has nothing to do with learning. Our schools are just indoctrination camps, brainwashing our children to follow orders and bow to authority. David Icke has been on about this for a long time, and boy, he took a lot of flack when he first started out, but I think it's becoming very obvious to everyone how close to the truth that is. Money controls the legal system, it controls our courts and controls our judges. If you go to the Ubuntu website, you'll see a lot of letters that I've written specifically from South Africa to the various governmental departments, trying them to explain how the legal system can be independent if it's actually a corporation that pays the salaries of the judges and all the people that uphold the legal system. So it's a very interesting twist. Every week new laws are made by the government, and they passed and imposed on the people. We don't know that these new laws are passed until it's too late. In South Africa, they publish it in a place called the Government Gazette. I don't know where they put it here in the UK, but it's probably a similar ridiculous little publication. Governments and the corporations that fund them have turned the people into their slaves. In essence, the government has stolen the country from its people. That's what they've done. The country belongs to its people. Governments of all the countries of the world have stolen their countries from its people. How can I make this statement? Because all the governments in the world are corporations. And if you don't know, here's a list of some other countries that are registered as corporations. Just a quick look at that. And the UK, if you go to Dun and Bradstreet, you'll find it registered there as UK corporation. We've got to stand up and change this, people. Nothing is going to happen until we do this ourselves. The 5-point mantra of an Ubuntu contribution system is critical. It is not a bartering system. Please don't think that. A lot of people jump to that conclusion. It has got nothing to do with barter or trading. That's where we keep making the same mistake, because he who has more to barter or trade will eventually rule the roost. So you can't introduce that back into the system. No money, no barter, no trade, no value attached to anything larger than anything else, because each one of our contributions is and should always be equally valuable. If you think that your contribution is more valuable than hers, you've got some serious ego problems and you need to check that. This is why this is so critical that you go away and start sharing this information with everybody. It's not because we want to start this up tomorrow, because we need to start thinking about it, become comfortable about how do we go from a capitalistic, money-driven society that'll kill each other for a slice of bread to a unity-driven, community-driven society that works together for the greatest benefit of everyone in that community. Not everybody planting their own food, because rocket scientists make really lousy farmers. That's also one of the mistakes that some of these communities have made. Try and force everybody to grow their own food is not the solution. The solution is allowing everybody to express their God-given talents that they're really good at. And that's what we kill in our children when we start sending them to school. So for God's sake, don't send your children to schools. Stop vaccinating them, don't send them to schools. Start homeschooling your children. Organize a community homeschooling system. Get your teachers that you respect, people that you want to teach your children. Start that system. The sooner we start educating our system the way we want to educate them, the quicker we get out of that brain prison, that left brain prison that David Icke so eloquently describes, get our children out of that and into developing them into logically open-minded thinking humans that become productive contributors to communities, knowing things, not memorizing things and regurgitating things from textbooks so that they can get an A on a piece of paper that'll get them a job that'll earn them money. That's the trap. In Ubuntu contribution communities, there are no jobs. There is a labor of love. That's what you do. You don't have a career or a job. You do what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what gives value and brings value to your community. Everything changes. We're going to have craft that hover or go, you dematerialize here and rematerialize there. I don't know. It's not going to be the way it is now. The moment you remove money, everything changes. So you've got to start thinking about it from that perspective as well. But we're not going to go from zero to hero in one day or in 1 year. So obviously we need to take these steps, and very rapidly we'll get there. I believe firmly, and I trust you'll agree with me, that the moment we introduced a free energy device to the world that everybody can make in their garage within an hour or two, we actually leapfrog to a far more advanced position in the scheme of things. In unity we thrive, and anything is possible. Only out of unity comes infinite abundance. Anything else is just a a perpetuation of division and conflict. And I would say after 6,000 years, I've had enough of reading the same stories over and over again. And I think as a species, we must say enough is enough. And join the Ubuntu movement and tell everybody about it. We've just launched the Ubuntu movement in the UK. There's one in South Africa, there's one in the USA going up, in Australia and Canada, everywhere. Become active, tell everyone, let's create a global movement of unity consciousness. That's what we need more than anything else. Thank you very much for coming. I hope I gave you some food for thought.